नमस्कार। नेहरू मेमोरियल की पब्लिक लेक्चर सीरीज़ में आप सभी का स्वागत है। हम अपने फेलोज़ का और देश भर के जाने माने विख्यात विद्वानों का व्याख्यान नेहरू मेमोरियल में कराते रहे हैं। इस श्रेणी में आज प्रोफेसर कपिल कुमार जी का आज व्याख्यान है। इस व्याख्यान हेतु हमारे बीच कर्नल RSN सिंह जी उपस्थित हैं। कर्नल साहब 1982 में भारतीय सेना में शामिल हुए और विभिन्न पदों पर रहते हुए रॉ में बहुत कम समय में ही उन्होंने भारतीय सेना छोड़ दिया और पूरी तरह अकादमिक जीवन जीने लगे। और अब तक 5 महत्वपूर्ण पुस्तकें हैं, जिसमें से एशियन स्ट्रेटजिक एंड कमेंटेटर ऑन स्ट्रेटेजिक इश्यूज़, military perspective, the military factor in Pakistan, the unmaking of Nepal, left-wing extremism and the making of an officer आदि हैं। तमाम तरह के MHA में और भी जगहों पर, टीवी में और विभिन्न विश्वविद्यालयों में मेंबर के तौर पर आप रहते हैं, अपनी वैचारिक सेवाएं दे रहे हैं। आज इस व्याख्यान के लिए अध्यक्ष के रूप में उपस्थित हैं। मैं आपसे अनुरोध करूंगा कि आज के व्याख्यान की अध्यक्षता करते हुए हमारे स्पीकर को इंट्रोड्यूस करें और अपनी बात रखें। कर्नल RSN सिंह जी। हाँ इंग्लिश।
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Kapil Kumar, Mr. Shukla, my dear colleague, Mr. Pushpender Kulshrestha, he's just been on a whirlwind tour of Maharashtra and Karnataka and doing a yeoman service to this country. He alone, I would say, is so majorly responsible in changing the narrative of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, some faces are very familiar to me here, and I'm indeed very thankful and grateful to Professor Kapil Kumar for inviting me for this important discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Kapil Kumar, I would say, is a congenital, pathological nationalist. He has held this belief and philosophy since a time when it was not easy to do so, without hope for any rewards, without expectation of any sinecures, without any recognition, yearning for recognition. Recognition he always had amongst the nationalists who were insignificant, who constituted a significant percentage. But such was the assault of the left and the jihadis that the nationalists were pushed to the wall. They were marginalized lot. So it is only after 2014 that the can of untruths, lies and fraud, the lid of that can has been removed, and that is how the nationalists have gathered here to listen to another great nationalist, Professor Kapil Kumar, right here in Nehru Bhavan. I don't know whatever it is called now, but it was unthinkable. It was unthinkable a few years back. So when I talk of these, these assault by jihadis and leftists, they were spearheaded by none other than at least 5 Muslim education ministers, 6 or whatever. So, had there been education ministers of the ilk of, say, R.C. Mazumdar or Professor Kapil Kumar, probably the growth story of India would have been different. Because what they did was that they inflicted a sense of inferiority complex amongst the Hindus, not Indians as such, but amongst the Hindus. And that is why, that was, those period of 60s, 70s, 80s, it was known as Hindu rate of growth. Now we are growing, when we are growing at, 8%, 7%, 8%, what do you term it? This is also a Hindu rate of growth. But had, if we had, as I said, education ministers of the ilk of Professor Kapil Kumar, probably we would have grown at the rate of 12%. Because there are still, we haven't entirely, overcome this sense of inferiority complex, though the narrative is changing very fast. So it is in this light that we have all gathered here. And it is in this light that, the topic for today, the scare of Netaji and INA, British and Congress attitude. Well, the whole battle of narratives, it is between the people who actually fought for freedom's struggle, were part of the freedom struggle, and people who were part of transfer of power. That is where the history needs to be corrected. And Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was not a flash in the pan. He was a product of a whole movement starting from 1857. And then, Birsa Munda, Manipur, that Manipur revolt, and a series of revolts, and Aurobindo and Barun Ghosh and many, M.N. Roy, many others. So he was a product of, but that segment which actually fought for freedom, and Netaji Subhas, who ultimately got us our independence, that has to be underscored. That was eclipsed by the historians, the jihadi and Marxist historians. And now, of course, now the wheels of time has turned, and here is Professor Kapil Kumar to focus and resurrect the contribution of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I request Professor Kapil Kumar, an eminent nationalist historian, to put forth his views in this august gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Arsan Singh ji, Shukla ji, Pushpendra ji, Meenakshi ji, my other senior and colleagues. Normally, when I present a paper, I always speak extempo. But certain themes are such that one word here and there could lead to your defamations, the conditions which we live in today. But still, I'll try my best that I maintain my extempo thing instead of reading it out. Almost 2 years back, when I applied for the senior fellowship here, I had given a project on impact of Netaji and INA on India's freedom struggle 1945-47. Today, I stand to revise my title. And I'll say it should have been The Scare of Netaji and INA on India becoming a dominion, British and Congress attitudes. Because this fallacy, I've mentioned it in many of my lectures, the way the people of India were fooled that we got independence on 15th August. I was asked by a very senior government official a few months back, what have you written in this book? That means all this Amrit Mahotsav, we are talking of independence, 75 years and all is a hoax. I said, well, if you would have consulted a historian who has done research on these areas, would have told you that you could have celebrated the running away of the British from India 75 years. Because I'm very clear on that they ran away before they realized they will be kicked out of India. But before running, they not only protected their interests very well in India that was to take shape, but also planted their own loyalists who had served them for a long time in India. Each and every source one is looking for is revealing. And I don't know what more has to be coming out. And not that I have discovered these sources. Mountbatten's report of last viceroyalty was there for a long time. Transfer of power volumes were there for a long time. In 1976, they had come out. None of our great historians, I think except Sumit Sarkar, changed a word in their textbooks which they had written for modern India. This is what means subjective and ideological history to serve the powers that are ruling the country. Because that volume 6 itself is so explosive if you go through it. And I have not written it. These are the official British documents published by the Crown. What word I should use? I should use the phobia or the scare or the threat or the ghost of 1857 had never left the British minds in India till 47. So much so I remember reading a fortnightly report in UP that sometime in May 1917, a wedding was taking place in Anand Bhavan. So all the relatives had gathered. That wedding was in May. So the CID inspector wrote, 10th May is coming. These people are gathering in Anand Bhavan. Something fishy is there. There might be a revolt again. Later on they find out that it was just a wedding. There are many instances like that. The fall of the Bharatpur fort also was in their blue books, military blue books till that time. And when in November 1945, the commander-in-chief of British forces in India, right here, his office, I never knew that we will be tearing them to pieces sitting in their offices only now, over here, writes to the Governor General, Viceroy, Governor General, an 1850 type situation has emerged. And if we have to stay in India, we will have to reconquer India, and for this, I will need 1 lakh European soldiers. Is he making a demand? Or is he expressing the scare which he has in his mind of staying in India and what he has to do? And based on that report, Wavell, the Viceroy, writes back home, we must compromise and reach an agreement, or else there will be a movement much stronger than 1942, which we may not be able to control. And this he writes on 31st December 1945. You can imagine what 31st December is for the Britishers. When they are marrying and partying that day, he writes that back home. And these things make one thing very clear, that by this time the British had realized that they cannot rule over India anymore. The only way was to find an honorable exit in which they can protect their geopolitical interests as well as the interests of the Commonwealth, which mattered to them. This was a time when more than 25,000 of the INA officers and soldiers were imprisoned, not only at Salimgarh and Red Fort, but I have been able to identify 25 camps and jails in the country. And the more I research into the archives, every month the name of a new camp or a new jail comes over. Now, what is crucial about it and why I say the British care? Because many of these things, the colonial historians will not acknowledge and will not write. For example, the surrender of about 66,000 soldiers and officers of the British Indian Army in Singapore in 1942. I think this big a surrender is only in Bangladesh after that of 91,000 surrender of soldiers. Not even during Second World War. One go this amount of surrender had taken place. And you can understand that what humiliation it meant for the British to acknowledge this publicly, world over, particularly when the Second World War is going on. And then, much more humiliating to that was that out of these 66,000, about 44,000 Indian soldiers and officers crossed over to join the Indian National Army, which was organized to fight for the liberation of India. They will never admit it. Till today they have not admitted. 19th October, we were in a function in Red Fort. The asthis of one captain, Saab had come from, he was a Bal Sena captain in Singapore, and they had come to Red Fort, and our defense minister was there, Rajnath Singh ji. And this question came up, how to identify. I said it's very simple. All records are there of the 66,000 which were posted there in Singapore at that time, in the military files. And all record is available out of how many came back to the prison camps or jails in India. Only thing is you have to declassify those files. The names will be out, their villages will be out, their parents' names will be out, their units will be out. But the British will never accept that. And these are the kind of pressures which I am going to come in. Okay, what went under the tables? during this period of 45, 46, 47. Now, this happening of Indians crossing over to the INA was not something new. As Dr. Singh pointed out, it started something from 1857, where the soldiers, the common man, the rulers, the small zamindars, they all joined hands to fight together against the British. Something which was picked up by the revolutionaries, something which the Ghadar party stood for, mobilized. We know that the Lahore conspiracy case failed because of traitors, which we have even today. But the Singapore, how many books in history teach this? That in 1915, Singapore was taken over by the Indian soldiers of the Indian Army, British Indian Army, for 4 days. And then 56 of them were shot by the walls. More than 257 imprisoned, and how many sent to Andamans and all, a different story. This also happened with some units in Middle East. Or Chandan Singh Gadwali refusing to fire in comparison to those Gorkhas who fired in Jallianwala Bagh and whom we paid our pensions. In comparison to Gandhi pardoning the dyers for Jallianwala Bagh. Who was Gandhi to pardon? Who gave him the authority to pardon? Those butchers of Indians. But when? Now this, I'm not going into the details of INA formation, but let us be very clear on this aspect, that the INA formation was not done by General Mohan Singh. General Mohan Singh was given the charge of INA as its commander-in-chief. But INA was the product of the thinking of Raj Bihari Bose, Raja Mahendra Pratap Singh. In fact, he was to lead Azad Hind Sarkar, but for his one, I'll say, slip utterance on Japanese radio, that Bose was called. Gyani Amar Singh, Gyani Pritam Singh, these revolutionaries who had ran away from America, were in Thailand. And with Fujiwara, this whole idea had emerged at a Chinese tea shop in Bangkok. And then they go to Singapore, talk to General Mohan Singh and all. And then I'm not going into those histories of all. But the crucial thing here is that the way the Japanese will not accept the surrender and the crossing over of the Indians to INA, the British would also never accept that the INA was fighting for India's independence. So what to do? So very meticulously they coined a word, JIF, Japanese Indian Fighting Force, and carried out a propaganda. And interestingly, when I was on a TV channel on the Ukraine war, and I was comparing this Western propaganda which is coming on the Ukraine war, and I was comparing it with the files which I have read on the archives on the British propaganda during the Second World War. So only thing is that the media has changed. We have the electronic media today, but all intrigues and all ways are the same which were adopted during that war. So what was propagated? This is the Japanese Indian Fighting Force. Japanese has given them money. Which force wants to replace British colonialism India by Japanese colonialism, making it a Japanese colony. And our great leaders believed this. Not only believed this, I will say, I'll put it, were a part of this conspiracy, because why? Nehru, Maulana Azad and Rajendra Prasad, they had been told in 1940 An emissary had come from Japan of Raj Bihari Bose, who met these people, told them that this is our plan during the Second World War, that we'll raise an army with the help of Japan and attack India. And they were thrown out from the houses of Nehru and Azad. He even tore the papers. I think Azad tore or Nehru tore the papers. Azad tore the papers. Azad even tore the papers. Since you are a British agent, you have come to find whatever links are, and these papers are risky, and he tore the papers also. A.M. Shah's wife also, Sati, she came and met Bose. Went back and told that Bose has agreed to the plan. And even to arrange her visit, you will laugh at it, that in Kobe, the Sahay couple had to fight with each other for 3 months so loudly that the neighbors can hear their fights. So that the Britishers realize that the family is breaking and they are reaching the stage of divorce, and she should not have any difficulty in going back to India with the children. And why I am mentioning this incident? Because those in India today, having not read a line of history, attack Savarkar and attack revolutionaries, they don't know ABC of how the revolutionary movement acts, operates and plans. They don't leave their documents with you. They don't leave plans with you. And they will cheat you also. That you may put in document something, you may announce something, and you do the opposite when you want to share the power. This I call it meticulously planned propaganda, paid dividends, because even Nehru went up to Assam and made a statement that if Bose comes with the help of Japanese, I will myself have a sword in my hand and go and fight. And this was regularly broadcasted by the British controlled All India Radio at that time and BBC at that time, and not a word from Nehru or any Congress leaders. Okay, don't use it as a propaganda. They could have said, this is for my own people. Not a word of protest. Now, the disappearance of Bose created another scare among the British and the Congress leaders. I'm very clear, though it's not the topic today, I won't be going into the details. But there was no plane crash and there was no plane crash death. Let even the present day sold out great-grandnephews of Netaji family take a U-turn and shout in social media to bring back the ashes or file a petition. But it is beyond any doubt now that he died in the plane crash. What I've never spelled out why he didn't come. People ask this question. Maybe in the question answer session I'll try to answer that. I'm leaving that here only. And I'll come to that, why this British scare created more after his disappearance. But one thing more I'd like to say, that this scare was not among the British officials, politicians or congressmen, but among the families of the British posted in India. Looking at the environment in the country, what was happening? They were scared that they might be butchered or killed like 1857. There was a rush to go back. The government have to make full plans. How many seats on berths on ships will be allotted, how many will go, how they will be sent, what will be the schedule of these families to go. And all this fear again is mentioned in the governor's reports from provinces in the Transfer of Power, Volume 6. No one looks at it. Now, what was responsible for this scare? I have analyzed to look at put all the documents together and then make a picture out of it. It's like that puzzle you put together. That is the job of a researcher. A researcher's job is not to serve the dynastic masters, pick one sentence from here and say that, and pick one sentence from here or say that. And the moment you look in totality, a totally different picture emerges. One, please note, Azad Hind Sarkar was the only government which did not surrender before the allied forces. And mind it was a functional government. Some people have asked me that why you call him the first Prime Minister of United India and all. There were earlier also. I said, yes, I am a historian. I know Mahendra Pratap was there. But that government was never functional. That government never ruled over areas liberated from British. That government never had an army, never a bank, never other things, which this government had. And this was the only army, Azad Hind Fauj, which did not surrender to the Allies. A shocking thing for Mountbatten, the commander of Southeast Asia, who, disrespecting all ethics, got their memorial also blasted in Singapore. No army does that to another army. And not only that, told Nehru not to visit that. And Nehru abided by him. And Mountbatten has written in the foreword of Vijay Lakshmi Pandit's book, he was to go there, I told him not to go there, he agreed to, and from here started a friendship between me, him and Edwina that was to last long. You know, by other lectures I have given a point. Who arranged this visit of Nehru to Singapore? It was the MI5 which arranged the visit. Same MI5 which had planned Bose's assassination in Cairo and Istanbul, which when he used to pass through Germany from those routes. Tell me a single Congress leader whose assassination was planned by the Britishers after the approval of their Prime Minister Churchill. Why? They never planned Gandhi's murder or never planned Nehru's murder or anyone else's murder. Why Bose? And what had Bose done till 40? Bose had not made any militant army till 1940. That they are ordering it. There was a scare among the British for Bose since 1920 when he had refused to join the ICS on the plea that I want to serve my motherland and this will not be overdone. And the British were cunning enough to understand that here is the dangerous man. He was described as the 6th most dangerous prisoner in Mande. And how many? Only 3 Congress persons have been sent to Mande. Ajit Singh I consider among the revolutionaries, don't put him as a congressman. But Lala Lajpat Rai, Tilak, and then Bose. Please tell me, has any Congress leader been ever sent to Andamans also? It's very easy to shout abuses on Savarkar. Forget that. So, this psychic setback to Mountbatten, that they have forced the Japanese to surrender, Italians to surrender, Germans to surrender. And here is this, what they used to call rogue army of GIFs, which has not surrendered. The government which has not surrendered. And that is why 15th August was kept as date of transfer of power by Mountbatten. Because that was the day he had taken the surrender of the Japanese to humiliate India. That is why the trials were kept in Red Fort. बड़ा बोस बोलता था दिल्ली दिल्ली जाएंगे लाल किले पे झंडा फहराएंगे लो लाल किला ये रहा तुम्हारे लिए, which again boomeranged. I had made a presentation to all that. Secondly, The government did not only surrender, but what were the last orders of Bose? He had told his entire intelligence setup to go underground. We have his 7th August letter to the Japanese, where he is saying that now you have surrendered, you don't need these wireless sets and these equipments, please hand them over to us, we will use it in our guerrilla for or sabotage, what we will do. That letter is there. And the British were aware of that letter when these things were caught. Bose had said, the roads to Delhi are many. We are disbanding to regroup again. And if we fail, go and support Gandhi. The struggle must continue. Here is a man who, in spite of all humiliation and all conspiracies against him by Gandhi or Nehru, is so concerned about the motherland that he forgets that and he says, go and support Gandhi. Struggle must continue. And this is a reason why he didn't come back. I'll come to that later. Bose had clearly predicted when the World War started that whatever may be the result of the war, whosoever may win the war, the British Empire is doomed. In 1939 only he had said that. There will be no more imperialism. And then again in 1944 he makes this. Okay, today Russia and this West is one. But the moment the war is over, there will be a conflict between the two. He predicted this Cold War much earlier. And in that conflict situation, he says, we now look towards Russia to support the Indian freedom struggle. Move to Russia. No one ever bothered to read the interrogation reports of more than 25,000 iron nappers in the archives. I have been only able to read about 800 of them. People read Shah Nawaz or Prem Sehgal or Lakshmi Sehgal, the big names. It comes out clearly from these reports that written instructions had reached the Indian Legion, now fighting as INA in Germany, which Bose had created, to move to Russia. They had instructions that if Hitler wants to use against Russia on the Eastern Front, turn your guns towards the Germans. But you are not to fight Russians. And don't forget that when Bose had left India via Kabul, he was not going to Germany. He had no plans to go to Germany. His plans were to go to USSR and take their support. It is only when USSR backs out that he goes to Germany. There should be a lesson. And they know it. These leftists who say that he's a fascist and he supported Hitler and all. And my question to them is that was Hitler not a fascist when USSR and Hitler signed a non-aggression pact in 1939? Ribbentrop-Molotov pact. Was Hitler not a fascist till Russia was attacked by Hitler? Till that time it was imperialist war. Now it becomes a people's war. And who were you supporting in that war? Churchill, who massacred millions of Indians in Bengal, Assam and Odisha by a man-made created famine. Look at your own selves before pointing fingers at revolutionary leaders and all that. So, it was very clear that he had plans to move to Russia. He was in contact with Russia from November 44 itself. And he went to Russia. I'll leave it at that. I won't go today. Maybe some other day I take a paper on this whole mysterious, because it's another topic altogether, a very detailed one. None of the allied intelligence agencies believed the plane crash theory. And the irony is that all the commissions which were made to sit to inquire into Netaji's death in plane crash, none of these commissions summoned these intelligence reports of British or Americans or French and all to examine them. No mention of them in Khosla report. I don't know who made him a judge. No IB records were asked for. No CID records were asked for. And you are depending on Habibur Rahman's hearsay. But there are 4 others who are saying that he left by submarine. That you reject as hearsay. So I can't understand this kind of judgment. And that too without probing. Anyway, now look at the C4 reports, a very, very crucial report of April 46. All the top intelligence brass of Britain sits together and they examine the reports which are pouring in from different parts of the world about having sighted Bose or met Bose and all. And their conclusion is that these reports which are coming, they cannot be sidetracked. Because the people who are saying this are very responsible people. Why should the Afghan ambassador to Russia say that? Why should the Italian ambassador to Russia say that? So they want to go in for fresh aspects related to that. On 22nd May 1946, the INA officers had a reunion in Delhi. How much now? लगा लो May 5 और इधर लगा लीजिए आप September, October, November, December. 9 months after the plane crash. The meeting is chaired by Sardar Patel. General Shawad Nawaz Khan gives the welcome address. Then the national anthem of Azad Hind Sarkar is sung. And then 1 minute silence is kept. And this silence is not for the soul of Netaji. This silence is wherever he is, he should be healthy. There's a full file in archives. Because Netaji was being hunted since then. And what should be done with him, how he should be put on trial, all these things, where he should be put on trial and all. And the last noting on that file says, leave him where he is. Justice Khosla will not look at that. Nehru knew. And if Netaji was dead, then why was Nehru snooping on the Bose family? And forgot Bose family. Till 2013, any author who wanted to write on Netaji, IB will reach his residence. IB will reach the publisher. Go and ask Purbi Roy, Sanjay Chaudhary, Anand Mohan Sahe's, this Bharti Sahe's son. And the pages of Netaji's campaign in Burma, which he visited by Sahay, were taken by IB not to be published. Why? Because Arakan is the front where the British suffered the first defeat at the hands of the INA, and where large chunks of more Indian soldiers of the British Army crossed over to INA. So that humiliation of the British should not come out. And it is possible because we were reporting to MI5 till almost 1970. What has become very clear now, and thanks to this fellowship to me, the plan Netaji gave to those go back and support Gandhi was an unwritten plan, radicalized the Congress, the way he tried to do in 1939 after the formation of Forward Bloc. And don't forget here one thing, that the entire program of 1942 movement, Congress had not given a word except Karo ya Maro. It were the two broadcasts of Bose from Berlin radio, 19th August and 31st August, where the entire program was given. And program to the level कि जो खानसामे थे अंग्रेजों को, उन तक को अपील की थी कि ऐसा खराब खाना बनाओ कि अंग्रेज बीमार पड़ जाए. बाकी तो छोड़िए कि वॉर प्रोडक्शन को रोकना है और कम्युनिकेशन तोड़ने हैं और वो सब करने हैं. And what did Congress do to 42? The first thing after coming out of jails was to condemn 42. It's on record, it's not me. एक छोटा सा इंस्टांस देता हूं. I hope I'm taking time. This will just give you the mood in the country. This captain is in Lucknow jail. His father is in British Indian Army, a colonel posted at Karachi. The father comes to his son in Lucknow, asks him to write an apology. So he will get him out with his connections in the British Army. The son says no. And the father says कि मैं तुम्हें जमीन से बेदखल कर दूंगा, ये कर दूंगा, वापस चला जाता है. फिर उसके बड़े भाई को भेजता है कि जाके भाई को समझा. अब जेल में दोनों भाइयों में क्या बात होती ये नहीं पता चलती, लेकिन भाई जब वापस कराची जाता है तो जितनी जायदाद उसके नाम थी वो कराची कांग्रेस को डोनेट कर देता. हरिराम गुजरात का सिपाही है, जेल से बाहर जाता है, छूट के सीधा पटेल पे जाता है. गिव मी नेशनलिस्ट वर्क. एंड पटेल सेज भाई जाओ पहले अपने परिवार वालों से मिलाओ, घर वालों से मिलाओ. बोले ना, स्ट्रगल मस्ट कंटिन्यू. एक ऐसे जुनून था. कुली जिनको के सोल्जर्स बनाया था 6 महीने के अंदर, मद्रास के कुली, बर्मा और वहां के, जब उनको इम्फाल में ऑर्डर्स दिए जाते हैं रिट्रीट करने के, तो कुली जवाब देता है साहब पीछे नहीं जाएगा, दिल्ली आगे सिंगापुर पीछे. नेताजी बोला दिल्ली जाना. Many of them lost their lives in the battle of Red Hill. I'm skipping these, but I'd like to say one thing. 2 more instances I will give, and then I'll come to that. Of the British attitude I'll finish, and then briefly in 5 minutes I'll give the Congress attitude. A full unit of Eastern military intelligence was given the task to report fortnightly on Indians serving in the British Indian forces, and not to leave civilians also for working in that. And those reports are astonishing. The Indians started saying Jai Hind to British officers. Of course, they were court-martialed. We have now records that the Navy ships which brought INA people back from Pearl Harbor, the Indians clearly told them, you have done your job, now it is our turn. And the naval mutiny, जिसको कि इन्होंने दाल रोटी की म्यूटनी बता दिया कि वो अपनी दाल रोटी के लिए लड़ रहे थे. It had started in 45 October only. सौ के बैठे इन्होंने मुझे वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स निकाल के दिए कि जो शिप्स जा रहे थे इंडोनेशियन वॉर के लिए, वहां इन्होंने रिवोल्ट करके इंडियन नेशनल नेवी डिक्लेयर कर दी और अंग्रेज और डच सोल्जर्स को आइलैंड्स में उतार दिया नीचे. वो नहीं आएगा. Why? Because the Congress leadership was convinced by the British. Crush this naval mutiny. And it was not a naval mutiny alone. 3 army units, 3 air force stations had also revolted. और तलवार आईएनएस में तो बहुत पहले से वो चीज शुरू हो गई थी. Anyway, November 45 again, Gurupurab Day. Gurudwara of Calcutta. More than 30,000 people are present. And with Guru Granth Sahib, Netaji's photo is there. And this military intelligence person is shocked that the Sikhs never do that. How come they are keeping something with Guru Granth Sahib? All songs of INA are sung there, Sarat Bose is there. And will you believe that more than 3,000 serving British officers, Sikhs and soldiers are present in that gathering. The personnel from Indian Navy, Army, Police are sending funds for the relief of INA. And that is why Auchinleck, based on these reports, had said every Indian officer in the British Indian Army worth his salt is a nationalist. And not only that. Another thing had shocked the British. They had always ruled Indians through Indians. And when the trials began, I gave it in my last paper. And when they saw that ex-judges, ex-ICS officers, ex-police officials, they were all standing behind INA. Even liberals like Tej Bahadur Sapru and all. They were standing behind INA. तो ये क्या हो गया? हमारा तो ग्रिप ही खत्म हो गया. वो जो ऑकिनले कह रहा है बार बार के 1857 की सिचुएशन आ गई है, he is not lying. A major role had been played by the Indian diaspora abroad. I'm not going into their role. I've mentioned all in my book. But two things I'll mention. When the British forces reoccupied Singapore, the Balak Sena ashamed the Indians serving the British Indian Army over there. The slogan of Jai Hind was banned, and these kids will come out of the street, shout Jai Hind at British and Indian Army posted there. By the time they will raise their gun, they will run away in the street to the other side, go and do it from the other side. And made the Jai Hind slogan totally redundant. And you won't believe how many of these kids had become orphans, losing their fathers and all, fighting for the land. Had become paupers, because families after families had given everything they had. But we would not remember them. We would not consider them as freedom fighters. Why were the INA not considered freedom fighters by Nehru? Till I think जब ये तामर पत्र दिए गए 70s में, तब उन्हें रिकॉग्नाइज किया है, और नेवी वालों को तो तब भी नहीं किया. What was the scare? And the worst is, when this, I have given much details in my book, I am not going into that. I'll just give you one or two quotes. In 1948, excuse me, all the chief ministers, the prime ministers called at that time of provinces, when the war is on with Pakistan, they say, call back the INA. They are trained, they have just out of war experience. And Nehru writes back, इन्हें home guard बना दो. And doesn't stop at that. Make them home guards. And don't put all of them in one unit. What is the scare? Okay, even if you make INA people home guards, then too also, don't put them in one unit. There are many references to this regard. A very important letter is of that Dadabai Naroji's granddaughter, who was private secretary to Kushtubji Naroji. What's her name? Kushtubji. I'll just give you, I think the name is here somewhere with me. Kushtubji Naroji, who writes a letter to Louis Fisher, American journalist. Bose is very popular. Excuse me. Most of the British Indian Army, Indians in the British Indian Army are sympathetic to INA. And if Bose comes back with the help of Russians, neither Gandhi nor Congress will be able to reason out with the people. And there are many more such. Now what the Congress did here, that's very interesting. Great historians have discarded that theory of safety valve. Congress origin as a safety valve by Hume. I think those who discarded that have acted very foolishly, ignoring all facts of the freedom struggle. Tell me a single event or a single date when, against the revolutionaries, Congress not acted as a safety valve for the British Empire till 1947. So much so that the resolution on Udham Singh said, this is the act of a madman, and we hope that it will not affect our negotiations with the British. The negotiations we are doing under the table. Peasant movements. Show me one peasant movement they supported. They talk of Kheda and Bardoli, that is land revenue. There's a difference between rent and land. And I can give you, I've given in my earlier books that how Gandhi would be approached by the Viceroy through Birla. And how these peasant leaders would be treated. Rajkumar Shukla was lost, Baba Ramchand was lost, Motilal Tejawat was lost. No one bothered about them in the Congress. Not only that, look at the revolutionaries. Jatin Das, 63 days hunger strike, a purely Gandhian method. And Gandhi refuses. Don't ask me to comment, you know what I will comment. Couldn't even say that it is. But the least he could have said was that a revolutionary gave up his methods and adopted my method of hunger strike, which I am preaching. His whole attitude on Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, etc., you know. Tell me, cite one incident where the people are fighting for their freedom world over, that the person whom you have declared as the uncrowned king of your freedom struggle will make a statement, Indians are not ready for freedom. This is what Gandhi says in 1928 at Calcutta session when Bose moves an amendment for Gandhi, for Congress to go for complete freedom. And then tell me which country, after having declared complete independence at its role in Lahore, 1929, goes back to dominion. Give us dominion status. Many of such instances are there. And tell me one thing. Which country in the world, I'm just finishing in 5 minutes. Which country in the world will appoint the last representatives of the British who had looted India for 170 years, who had massacred Indians, bombarded Indians, imprisoned Indians, tortured Indians as their first Governor General? I was raising this question again and again. And the answer was right there in Lord Mountbatten's report. I'll read it. Because Mountbatten, after coming to India on 22nd March, invited everyone for meetings, including Gandhi. The only person who refused his invitation was Jayaprakash Narayan. And Mountbatten stated that. He refused because he thought that by meeting me, he is giving acceptance to the partition plan, to which he was opposed totally. Now Gandhi comes and talks with him in the first meeting. He tells him that you reorganize the interim government, make Jinnah the Prime Minister, and if Jinnah wants, he can make Nehru or other congressmen as ministers, but if he wants total ministers of Muslim League, he can have that. This is the statement coming for a leader of the masses who believes in democracy of an elected constituent assembly or an elected interim government where Congress are won through elections. That he is saying that you make Jinnah. And then, in the next meeting, it is very interesting. This is Mountbatten writing. He then astounded me by asking whether I knew an Englishman called Andrews, who had decided to devote his life to the service of India. Would I be prepared, he asked, to consider doing the same myself, not as a British viceroy, but as head of the Indian state, appointed and paid by the Indian government? I expressed my profound sense of honor at the suggestion, but pointed out that with my interrupted life career in the Navy awaiting me, with my home, family and friends in England, I hoped he would not press this point the more, so as I felt that an Indian should fill any such post. He replied, but when the time comes under such a scheme, you will not refuse to stay. This is Gandhi telling Mountbatten in March 46. Put it with another document which Lapierre and Collins have quoted. Page 9, I think. Krishna Menon had advocated to Cripps Mission that Mountbatten should be sent as the Governor General of Viceroy of India. And put it with two other documents, where Mountbatten is saying Krishna Menon was a very old friend. I had planted him with Nehru to influence Nehru. And the other word he uses is for VP Menon. The same I did with Sardar Patel by putting VP Menon there. Today it's not the topic. I had tremendous respect for VP Menon. But when I saw these recent military intelligence documents of the British and all, he had leaked out Operation Polo to the British of Hyderabad, saying they have decided to act. I can't give you the date because that is not in my purview. And the result of that was that 3 armed loads of aeroplanes flew from Karachi via Goa to Hyderabad. And this treasure of Nawab Hyderabad which went off now, this treasure went out via those planes. Forget other things. Now, in July 47, Nehru sent a formal letter to Mountbatten to be the first Governor General of India, which Mountbatten readily accepted. Gandhi had requested him, please, when a scheme comes before you, we hope you will stay. Now Mountbatten tries to argue, I accepted because Jinnah had also agreed that I can be the Governor General for both the countries, but later on Jinnah backed out. Jinnah put a slap on his face. He said, no, I'll be the Governor General of Pakistan. मजाक उड़ाया उसने कि तुम हिंदुस्तानी अंग्रेज को बनाओ गवर्नर जनरल अपना, मैं तो यहां खुद बनूंगा. Not only that, who was made the second Governor General? Rajgopalachari. Why? Who had given the partition plan for the first time in Congress? People forget the Rajgopalachari plan when they talk of that so and so talked of partition and so talked of partition. And throughout Gandhi, in his negotiations with the British, while he is in Aga Khan Palace also, he is talking of Rajgopalachari plan. And then his dialogues with Jinnah, he is trying to impress Jinnah. भाई इस प्लान को एक्सेप्ट कर लो, अंग्रेजों को चले जाने दो, और इस प्लान के हिसाब से बाद में जो जो प्रोविंस जाना चाहेंगे पाकिस्तान में चले जाएंगे, पाकिस्तान बन जाएगा. That to be done. और लास्ट में बड़ा मजेदार चीज है, दिस इज, आई विल रीड दिस एंड आई विल फिनिश इट हियर बिकॉज़ आई वांट दिस टू गो टू यू. He says Krishna Menon came to running to me that Gandhi was very upset and emotional and all. जब ये प्लान डिक्लेयर कर दी गई तो ही राइट्स आई इनवाइटेड गांधी, क्योंकि डर ये था कि शाम की मीटिंग में गांधी ये ना कह दें कि हम पाकिस्तान ये डिमांड अब रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं. और फिर वो क्या कहता है माउंटबेटन, आई टोल्ड हिम that although many newspapers had christened it as Mountbatten plan, they should have really christened it as the Gandhi plan, since all the salient ingredients, such as leaving the choice of their future to the Indian people themselves, avoiding coercion, transferring power as soon as possible, were suggested by him. I also told him that I understood that in his earlier days, he had not been averse to dominion status. Even during the war, although no longer in favor of it, he had expressed himself as not being irritatively against it. He later sent me an extract from Harijan, dated 16 December 1939, in which appeared the words, "Similarly, I have said to a friend that if dominion status were offered, I should take it and expect to carry India with me." This is Gandhi. बाकी सब में नहीं जाता इन डिटेल्स में, लेकिन तीन चार चीजें बड़ी क्लियर हैं. Why INA was denied a position back in the Indian Army. Sardar Patel pleaded for it, very strongly pleaded for it. Nehru said no, because his mind was brainwashed by Auchinleck, first Wavell and then Mountbatten. The way they hid facts from the people. In the assembly, Wavell did a veto on cabinet decision of releasing the remaining INA prisoners. And Nehru writes that we didn't make public this veto, otherwise there would have been turmoil in the country. क्या क्या छुपा रहे हो तुम उससे? Also worth quoting from a paper which was written by the staff of Mountbatten. Sir, it's finished. It's finished. This was a paper submitted by staff of Mountbatten giving the reasons for staying on as Governor General of the Dominion of India. See, nowhere they are saying independent India or independent. It says, from the British point of view, it would be of the greatest prestige, value that Congress, after so long a fight for independence, should ask that their first Governor General and two of their governors should be British. If His Excellency were to go, and if the Indian government were thus turned down in their application for a British Governor General, they would be, as a lover, scorned. The relations between India and Britain, which had improved so miraculously in the last 3 months, would again deteriorate at an unforeseeable rate. This is what he says. And there are ample effects to that. When you read these documents, put these documents with the recent development 2 months back. I'm sure you all must have read that when a historian in England tried to publish the diaries of Mountbatten, which have not been made public till now, the British government went to the court and filed an affidavit that if these diaries are published, relations between India and Pakistan will be spoiled. What is that which is being hidden of 1947 that even today that will affect the relations? And there is so. Why did the congressmen wanted Auchinleck to continue as commander-in-chief, naval chief a British, air chief a British? Why they wanted all the British officers to remain and serve Indian army? Though they said that we are Gandhians, we don't want an army for India. But they wanted British officers in the Indian army. Why? Because the fear was only one, and one, that INA and Bose may come back. I'll end by quoting the words of Colonel Amrik Singh Gill. He was one of the intelligence officers of Netaji who had come by submarine, landed at Konark, and then had established bases in the country, was arrested, tried and sentenced to death, but escaped from police custody at Sialda station, went underground, and then he remained, served during partition and all, saving Hindus at Layalpur by flights and all. He writes, but before this quote, I may give one sentence to you. Sarat Mot at that time had tried to reorganize the INA, stating clearly that this INA is going to be a political force in the country. Which never happened later on because he died. Gill writes, fear and anger cannot silence the heart and mind. Is this what we fought for? Where is Netaji? Under these circumstances, I returned to Malaya by early 1948. Not a medal, nor a single good thought, not a moment of peace, So be it, God. Thank you.